Anybody else get this feeling that we're just recycling the same content every now and again? Because I certainly am. Welcome back to another episode of the Green White Podcast brought to you by Argyle Life. Let's get the usual stuff out of the way. Do remember to like, subscribe if you aren't already. Do follow us on all the various social media platforms if you aren't already. And do get your questions in. This is an interactive show. We couldn't do it without you. So do get your thoughts and questions in. We will show as many comments as we can across the course of the next hour to hour and a half. You know it by now. It's never an hour. And we will get to as many questions as we can before we preview Burnley at the weekend. Joining me tonight, as you can see, Adam, Sam, and Dan are all in situ to discuss yesterday's 1-0 home defeat at the hands of Martí Cifuentes' QPR. Yeah, we're going to come to the nitty-gritty of it in a second. But we're going to start on a very sour and negative note, unfortunately. And for those of you who may or may not have seen it earlier on today, Plymouth Argyle did release a statement earlier on this afternoon, and it read as follows. We are aware of reports of alleged racist behaviour towards a Queen's Park Rangers fan at yesterday's match. We have moved quickly to identify the offender and strongly condemn actions of this sort. Home Park is a place for everyone at the heart of the community, and we thank the Green Army for reporting the offence to the club's safety team, enabling the club to pass on details of the individual to Devon and Cornwall Police. The investigation is now with the police, and we await the outcome before any further action is taken. Obviously, racism or any discrimination of any form is truly abhorrent and is not welcome inside Home Park or any stadium up and down the land. And well done to all of those who were around said individual yesterday who passed on the details to the stewarding team and to Argyle. And we hope that Devon and Cornwall Police and Plymouth Argyle Football Club deal with that person appropriately, because they are not a true Argyle fan and they are not welcome at football stadiums. That's out of the way. Sam, why don't you talk us through Argyle 0, QPR 1?
Yeah, bit embarrassing, really. We came into that thinking after that game against Oxford that we might, after a full few days of the training pitch, we must let's see the fruits coming into effect. No, pretty shocking. It was quite somehow managed to be the worst home performance of the season. I'm not going to snap and say it was the worst performance of the season outright, because basically almost all the away games were worse than that. But it was a dreadful performance, but bad as we've played at home this season. Maybe it is one of those things where it's got to get worse before it gets better. It's like, going to the doctor to take your medicine. You might feel bad for a few weeks, but you'll feel better at the end of it, maybe. But I can't believe how bad we were. I cannot believe how bad we were. It's going to be a bit of a moan, I'm afraid. So we, first 5 minutes, had the only chance of any description of the game, which not a good chance, not a high-value chance. Could call it a half chance, maybe, where Puach puts the ball in and Al Hadj just sort of tries to flick it into the net. Get straight to the keeper. That's the only time we troubled him all game, was in that first 5 minutes or so. They had then lots and lots of chances. They had a few half chances that whistled across goal, but they also had the one where Grimshaw goes and punches it and puts his head in danger, and then it goes back to their man who just narrowly goes wide. They had one from a corner completely unmarked that they could have scored from. They then had the incredible first half Grimshaw save. I won't just brush over that. I will come on to it a bit more later on, because spoiler alert, he is my player to talk about today. And then that was going into halftime. We were blooming lucky to be level going into halftime 0-0. And then Grimshaw makes a save that was nearly as good. Second half again from Frey, both of them from Frey. And then obviously their goal comes. Bali Mumba, goodness knows what he's thinking, what he's doing, just do the simple thing for once, and then Grimshaw still manages to make a save, but eventually the luck just runs out, and one of those saves is eventually by pure odds going to fall to somebody who can tap it in, which is what they obviously did and won the luck. They should have made it 2, or certainly could have made it 2. They had a unmarked shot from the sort of edge of the area that just, I think, went a couple of inches wide of goal. I think it's got to be up there with our lowest home XG of the season. Probably only Watford would maybe be worse. but I think it's got to be up there with our worst XG against at home for sure, because QPR really could have scored 3 on another day without a doubt. If maybe even more if they were clinical, and could have even scored 4 or 5. Just a completely dismal performance. I don't know what was done leading up to it. I mean, I think it does back up what I said. Muslic is not going to be the guy for an immediate impact. He's going to be the doctor who, like, maybe makes you take your medicine and have to suffer a little bit in the hope that, like Amorim at United, it will come good in the long run. And I actually think it can do. I'm not rolling him out at all. But again, it's a very clearly he's trying to transition to a very different style of play. The players aren't suited to it. Again, like Amorim at Man United, he doesn't have the squad to do what he wants to do. Obviously, then, just to make the day even worse, all the other results went against us. Pompey won, Cardiff won. Who else? Hull got a win as well. Even Luton got a draw. So we were the only team to lose out of the ones that were down there. No positives to take. Well, nearly no positives. There are maybe 1 or 2 players who had good individual games, but the majority of them didn't. And as a team, we didn't at all. And I think at the minute, we're as good as down, is the way I see it. Because if I know we're only 5 points off, but it's a worse goal difference. And if you look at the points per game now that's needed, we've won 1 in our last 18 games and none in our last 13. I'm just going to check the league table to check my figures are correct, because I don't want to say the wrong figures. Yeah, we now have 19 games remaining. Based on Pompey's little upturn in form, Hull with Ruben Sellers, I think we are going to need 49, 50 points, maybe 50 with our goal difference to stay up. We're going to need now 29 points out of 19 games. I don't think that's got much of a chance in hell of happening, really. So I think if it does, it does, and I'll be delighted if it does. But I think now I'm thinking, let's just give it a chance. Let's not completely lose our heads. Said after losing his head, but let's just it's maybe it's a bit doomed in the short term, but I think the medium long term, there's a chance. I think with Muslic, he's clearly got his way he wants to play. I've been very vocal about who I would have appointed. I'm not going to repeat the name again because you've all fed up of hearing that name come out of my mouth. But having not appointed him, having not appointed the person whose name I won't say, Muslic has got to be given time and chance. So let's see. With caveats, if it's that bad every week, then no, because we'll probably not pick up another point all season if it is. But as long as we see some signs of improvement, or at least some signs of getting on an even keel, and of the way he wants to play starting to peek through, then I think he will deserve to get his chance. He'll deserve to get the summer to rebuild the team and rebuild it the way he wants to. I think everything about the club at the minute is not making me very happy. There's a lot of bad stuff going on tactically. I think a lot of the players just aren't not in their comfort zone, and it's going to be a reset. It's going to be a painful one, but yeah, I would be astonished if we're going into the last game of the season still fighting. I think we'll be down by then. It's the truth. Anyway, that's my miserable rant. I'll come back and say something positive later on about a certain player who I've been known to moan about. So there is that.
Wish I hadn't asked now, to be honest.
Yeah, sorry, I have to be honest at times. It's been a while since I've had a rant on there, and I think that was a constructive rant, and I think the points I made were backed up, even if I turn out to be wrong. I hope I am.
I only tweeted 90 minutes ago I was trying to try and keep the next hour and a half of people's lives positive, but I think Sam's just punctured that balloon very quickly. Adam, let's go right the way back then to the start of the game. You all know now, if you've been watching regularly, which I hope you have, how we structure this until we get into our relative rants. Team news was announced at the earlier time of 11:30, of course, with it being on Sky Sports, and it was fairly obvious to anybody who was going to the game that we were going to set up with a 4-2-3-1 with only Paulson and Pleguezuelo as the 2 fit centre halves within the building. And I think even Pleguezuelo may have put a question mark on that by the end of the game, with the way he was hobbling around on the halfway line at one point. What did you think of it? Because my initial reaction when I got into the ground on Saturday was he couldn't do anything else.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. There's one change in that lineup, which is Hardy in for Galloway, which is not exactly a straight swap, and it just goes to show that his hand has been forced into this, and we've had to line up the way that we did. At least going into the ground, as much as I felt like his hand was forced because it was, I did at least get the idea of, okay, there's a lot of attacking players on the field here. We could at least have an entertaining end-to-end game, particularly with the idea that both teams are a bit better going forward than they are at the back. Expected, we might see goals at both ends, and it could not be further from the truth. It's totally one-way traffic as a result. That lineup, you know, I'll defend Muslich on that point because his hand was forced in it. What I cannot defend is that we're in the middle, coming up actually to the 20th of January, knowing that this had to be a very, very active transfer window, and that's the best team we could put out. What has been going on? And it's a pattern we've seen before in previous windows where we've waited and waited and then not got our man. I saw it with Josh Coburn. I would argue we saw it with Finn Azaz, where we could easily have made that permanent in the summer, didn't, and waited and waited and ended up losing the guy. It looks here that we're waiting again. We've been linked with Joe Lowe at centre back pretty much since the start of the window. Absolutely no movement. Have we got an alternative target? Doesn't look like it. And at this point, I cannot defend. As I say, I can defend Muslich for that lineup. I cannot defend the backroom and the board for that lineup because we should never be coming into this part of the season, coming into what is what's going the final fortnight of the transfer window, and our two fit centre backs are Victor Palsson and Julio Pleguezuelo, possibly one now. Hey, I spent a lot of time on this podcast defending Victor Palsson. I don't want it to be our only centre back. Let me clarify. I want somebody else to, at the very least, be able to come into the position. So yeah, it's just been mismanaged. It's just been mismanaged completely. Muslich could do nothing about that. He obviously will start being questioned eventually if all of the performances is like. I agree with Sam. He's got a free pass at the moment. If we get outplayed to that extent every week, and let's not downplay the extent to which we were outplayed. 1-0 flatters us entirely. 3-0 is probably a fair scoreline. And to be honest, from a chance creation point of view, that looked every bit as bad as the Cardiff away game. It just so happened that they put 5 past us that day, and QPR could only get 1 in. So the lineup was a mess, which wasn't the fault of the head coach, but the lineup can't keep being a mess if we want to get anywhere this season, which I accept is unlikely. So yeah, I didn't have a good feeling when it was announced, but any goodwill that I had was dissipated very quickly as the process and as the game started to go. And I think the worst part of it is, we've got a game on Wednesday, and I can't really see any lineup being different. I mean, do we bring a player in now and get him straight back in? Are injuries likely to recover that we've got in that time? Probably not. So and then you get to registration deadlines and all of that. This has turned into a bit of a rant about the transfer window. It's the second rant of the day. Can you tell that we're missing the end of the snooker for this? But it's a bad place to be, and it's not as if we didn't have any money to spend this transfer window. It's all been self-inflicted. Inaction, dithering that we've seen from this club time and time again results in lineups and performances that we saw yesterday, and it's got to change. It's got to change. Is it going to change? I don't know, but I don't want to see that lineup again, and I sense I'm probably going to.
Yeah, it's perhaps that way. I mean, Dan, if you look at the first half of Saturday's game, I actually, my first thought, so where I sit in the stadium, there's a group of 6 of us who go to every week, or well, not every week in my case because of work. But we always have a little chat at half time. We turn, look at each other, have a little discussion of how things have gone. My reaction to the first half was entertaining, a good watch, but purely down to both teams' inability to retain possession. It always seemed like mistakes were going to come from the other team giving the ball away. Would you say that's a fair summary, or did you have the first half down as a little bit different?
I wouldn't say that's unfair at all. First of all, I hope that my audio is all right. I got some headphones which aren't working, so hopefully it's not absolutely terrible. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's an unfair assessment. We talked about the 4-2-3-1 that we set up as. To be honest, the first half an hour, the fullbacks were pushed so high up the pitch that actually it was kind of a 2-4-3-1 with Puhac and Mumba either side really looking to push on and give us attacking width. And that was ironically probably our best. Well, the first 20 minutes was probably the best 20 minutes of the game from our point of view, just because, as you say, Joe, not a lot happened, which says a lot about the other 70 minutes. Yeah, giving us attacking width got us into a few good areas. The three behind the striker looked to kind of drift across the pitch, play quite narrow and create overloads, which did isolate the fullbacks at times, but did give us the opportunity to create. Unfortunately, we just didn't have the quality to kind of get through the lines. And to be honest, it just involved players getting in each other's way. And obviously then, you know, when you're playing a back two, you do run the risk of a quick opposition counter down the flanks, dragging centre halves out, which is how QPR started to create some chances. Muslic saw that, dropped the fullbacks back again into a more conventional back four. But then QPR saw the opportunity to just drive at the heart of our defence centrally. We didn't protect the back four well enough. We'll go on to the centre mid issues later on, I'm sure, but we overpressed and just didn't press well enough, and therefore they were just driving at our back four far too often. And getting in at halftime at 0-0 was a bonus, thanks to some really good saves from Grimshaw. It wasn't terrible, as you say, but you wanted to see more in the second half. You kind of wanted to see the halftime rocket, few tactical changes and us coming out and performing better in the second half. It wasn't any better. It only got worse from there. And as Adam said, it was a 1-0 loss that very much flattered us, which is never a good thing.
It certainly isn't. And Miran Muslic referred this in the post-match press conference, didn't he? He said, you know, I've just said to them, when your goalkeeper is your best player in a 1-0 home loss, that's a sad indictment of how your afternoon's gone. And then in steps, you know, the first 10, 15 minutes of the second half were fairly even, I would have said. I don't think either team really had overall control of the second half. Up until the 62nd minute, and then in steps 2 minutes of football that I would imagine Bali Mumba would like to forget very quickly. It all starts on the 62nd minute where inadvertently he threw the ball to a QPR player who intercepted it and ran through on goal, and Chair's effort was deflected wide. From said resulting corner, we dealt with it rather well. Michael Baidoo gets us up the other end of the field with a really enterprising run, drew the foul and the yellow card. From the resulting free kick, QPR put it out of play. QPR hooked it clear. It came down with snow on it. It was almost into orbit. I think NASA tried to declare it as a new dwarf planet, and it landed on top of Bali Mumba's foot and then ended up in the path of Ilias Chair, who drew another good save out of Dan Grimshaw before the ball fell at the feet of QPR youngster Coley, who drove it home into the far corner. Lads, Bali Mumba's a player who's under pressure at the moment, has been for a few weeks with a few of his performances. We know what he's capable of going forward, but we also know he's not really on a player to play on the right side, is he?
Yeah, and I mean, I say this to be clear as a fan of Bali Mumba. Like, I feel like the 1 million deal we got is still very good. I feel as though he's got a lot of talents and on his day can offer a lot to the side. However, I was really concerned actually by exactly what was going through his head, what was on his mind as he did that, because it those 2 minutes you described there, Joe, are scarily bad, and it's strange, you know, because I remember the Sheffield United game where admittedly we did lose, but it was our best away performance for a very long time, and the thought of, yeah, okay, we can get behind this sort of back four for a little while before we get to the transfer window and then sign a centre back. Lol. I feel as though that was his one good game on that right side. And then we had a look at the Middlesbrough game where he's at fault for the late goal. We see yesterday where he's at fault for the goal. And I just feel as though, you're right that he's not the sort of player to play in that position. And it was a strange sensation almost of feeling as though actually I wouldn't mind seeing Martí Sorinola start over Bali Mumba, which is a very, very rare case as somebody who's a Mumba fan. But I think right now we are in that situation where he's a lot better than Mumba in that particular position.
We all spoke after Tuesday night, and we all expected that with Galloway's injury befalling him, that we were going to play Puhac at left centre back. Mumba was going to come over to the left side, and Sorinola was going to come to the right side. That almost seemed like the logical thing to do, didn't it?
In a way, but I don't see Puhac as a left side centre back at all. I know he's got minutes there, but it's in a similar way to how Ogbetta's got minutes in a similar position when he's much better at wing back. And I think giving Puhac the opportunity to go forward, you almost lose more, I would argue, by putting Puhac there than you gain. But of course, then we've got it's a very good point actually. As I go back to Mumba in the comments there, where the mistake at Millwall as well. It's another example, and it's annoying, to be honest, that a lot of this, and these things may be totally unrelated, but a lot of this has come at a time where he's been linked with a move away. At the very least, we get the impression that Leeds are looking at him. Farke's worked with him at Norwich before, and that easily could be on his mind. Alternatively, it could mean absolutely nothing, and Bali Mumba's just going through a poor run of form. I agree with you, John. I think I agree with the consensus that this position does not suit Bali Mumba's talents. He's had a couple of good games at right back. He's had more than a few bad games, and he looks a lot better when we're discussing him. A, on the left, and B, as a wing back or winger, wing back especially, I'd argue.
The only thing I'll say, and ironically, if Leeds looking at him, because Leeds don't play a free at the back either, so he's still going to be not quite in his best position if he goes there. But the only thing I'm going to say is that since we've signed him on a permanent in the Championship, he has probably played a combined 80 odd minutes in his actual best position, which is left wing back and a free at the back, because under Wayne Rooney and Steven Schumacher, we played 4 at the back. Rooney preferred him as a full back and a 4 at the back. Schumacher preferred him as a wide forward. I actually think Rooney, I agree with Rooney. I think if you are going to play a back 4, he's a full back rather than a wide forward, because he progresses the ball up the field well, despite the odd defensive error. Pros and cons, but I think if 4 at the back, that is his best formation. And under Foster, he, for some reason, refused to play. Yes, he played a 3 at the back with wing backs, but he would only play Mumba on the right side. He wouldn't give him any minutes on the left at all. And now, obviously, very early days, played him on the right against Oxford, and then played him on the right, but double whammy on the right and in the back 4 at right back against QPR. So I get it, and he is frustrating, and he is making individual errors and whatever. But he has never had a chance as a left wing back in a back 3, which is in shape now. Obviously, if he goes to Leeds, he's still not going to, because Farke has only ever, to my knowledge, played a back 4. So, but could he be a decent squad player with some good coaching to work on his gremlins for them? I think he could be. He's certainly not going to come in and usurp any of their regular starters, because I think they're all better than him. But what I would like, if I were a Leeds fan thinking of Bali Mumba, what I would liken him to is kind of maybe like Saxon Early coming in for Argyle in our title-winning season. Someone who just comes in and plays the odd Tuesday night game for rotation, plays half an hour at the end to freshen legs up, just like a role player, a rotation player. That's what I think Mumba could be for Leeds. And I think when he's outside of the cauldron of chaos that Argyle seemingly is at the moment, he'll be in that better headspace and not make so many mistakes. So I as much as he is on bad form, I can kind of see why it makes sense that he would go to Leeds. And
to be clear,
for everyone.
Is it not just trying to move the conversation on a little bit, because we're going to come on to individual players in a minute? Is it not also worth remembering Bali Mumba is only 23? Like, it's not as if we're dealing with a vastly experienced champion.
Or is he not? No, is he 23? I thought it was
When
24.
we're not dealing with a vastly experienced championship player here. This is a guy who's got 80 appearances at the level across a couple of spells at Peterborough, Argyle, and a handful for Sunderland. Like,
He is 23, sorry.
yeah, I know. I checked it before I said it, Sam. Come on,
Sorry.
stay in your lane.
Not used to
But
the
is it
research, you see.
is it not worth remembering that as well, that he is part of what is essentially quite a young squad?
I mean, correct. He's an asset. He's an asset at this point. It's a depreciating asset if he continues to play so poorly. But to be clear, I'm going to say it for the third time. I am a Bali Mumba fan here. I think he can succeed at Argyle beyond what he's already done, and playing him in the best position will achieve that, which I think he's only really done under Neil Jewsnip and Kevin Nanscott. So I agree with a lot of what's been said, and I agree that there's a reason that we were all so thrilled when he signed permanently and we got him for the fee that we did. And I still think that was an excellent deal for us to get, because even if we do sell into Leeds now, you'd like to think it'll usurp what we paid for him. So he is an asset to us, and he is still learning on the job. And I think giving him a consistent job in where he likes to play in this system could absolutely work. But that's not to defend his performance yesterday, which was a little bit scandalous in comparison. But he's one of those with a contract and time on his side, which is nice. It's just a
Dan,
shame that it gives it up in such crucial moments.
Dan, anything to add on Mumba quickly?
Yeah, all I was going to say on Bali is on from a tactical point of view, and I think that is the issue with playing him on the right, is he's not the type of player to drive down a byline and put crosses in. He always wants to drift inside, get involved more centrally. Now, the problem when he plays on the right is he's not strong enough on his left foot. So either he cuts inside into traffic when teams are showing him down the line, as defenders are taught to do, and just runs into traffic and gets caught out, or he's forced to go into an area which he doesn't want to go down the line and then just get boxed against the touchline and loses it that way. When he plays on the left, he's strong enough to cut in and cause some havoc, like that goal against Huddersfield opening day last season, or be shown down the line and defenders don't know which way to send him. So it's just imperative for me that he plays on the left. And as Sam said, preferably left wing back in a back three. I'd probably go against your point about him being better on left back rather than left wing in a 4-3-3, just because I think the defensive errors are just too common at the minute, and getting him further away from his own goal, I think, would help with that, to be brutally honest. It's massively frustrating because, as Adam said, there's a hell of a player in there, but he is costing us points right now, and it must be hitting his confidence, which isn't what we need.
And
yeah,
it goes very.
Because we're not going to play you back four too many more times, but fair point.
It goes to what the comment on screen show from Jut saying he made a mistake. Fans need to get off his back. Hardly the full guy for this season. This is on recruitment and lack of quality on the pitch. And I think we'd all agree that one of Mumba's best spells last season was when he was playing wide on the left in an attacking sense. But unfortunately, we can't get him further up the pitch because we don't have the fullbacks to cover in the positions that we're trying to cover at the moment. More on recruitment later, because as I suggested on X earlier, I don't think anybody is safe tonight from criticism. We're nearly half an hour in. 1,200 people have given up their time to forget the snooker final tonight and to watch us. We are incredibly grateful to you for that. Let's get on to players. I gave you advance warning of this question earlier on. As always, one player each. You can talk positively or you can talk negatively about them. Dan, you were the last one unmuted. I will let you go first because you're actually going to break the rule. You're actually going to talk about two players, but it's been endorsed by Sam Down and he makes the decisions.
Indeed, which I'm very grateful for. But it's a kind of comparison between two. Like I said earlier, comparing the two centre mids performances yesterday. Now, when we play a 4-2-3-1 and we don't just have someone sitting right in front of the back four like we did with Jordan Houghton last season that was so effective, it does mean that we are prone to being hit on the counter and exposing our centre-backs when we try and press high up the pitch. Muslik said he wants to try and play in the opposition's half, meaning pressing, trying to win the ball back high up and all that stuff. And that's good. You know, when a good effective press is really, really important. Adam Randall had mostly a very good game yesterday, I thought. His ability to get out of tight spots when we're playing out from the back and his back's to goal is really, really good. He has the awareness of when a defender's trying to set a trap on him and nip the ball back, and passing it out and building attacks from there, playing it out to fullbacks was really, really good. He, unfortunately, I think was partly at fault. Obviously not the main culprit for the goal, as we've discussed, but he didn't really charge out to Ryan Colley as he could have done, I think, a bit more for the goal, which is frustrating. Maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit, but I just thought he was a tiny bit passive and a tiny bit slow in getting out, which was a bit frustrating. But generally speaking, I thought he had a very good game. Other than Grimshaw, probably our best player. And he's still growing into... Sorry, go on.
Just very quickly, Dan, the pass in the first half that was like an eye of the needle stuff to get the winger on the right-hand side down to the byline to put the ball in was actually one of the best things I've seen at Home Park all season. It was weighted and placed perfectly, and that is Randall in a nutshell in an attacking sense, isn't it?
Yeah, he's got that in his locker for sure, and I think that it's encouraging to see that both in kind of the attacking third, he can kind of pull off stuff like that, and then in the defensive third, he can both play when we're playing out, like I say, with his back to goal and have that awareness and get out of tight spots, which is really important when opposition teams are trying to press and set traps and double mark you and things like that. And also normally he's very good at kind of flying into blocks and things like that. And you know, I'm encouraged by, despite the small mistake, I'm very encouraged by him. The issue is left centre mid, Darko JB, who had, unfortunately, another really poor game yesterday. I think his pressing was the biggest issue. Like I said, once we dropped back to that conventional back four, and QPR tried to attack us more centrally, our centre backs were exposed because JB was over pressing. You know, I don't mind that when it's someone like Panucci Kamara, who's, to use it as an example, who's so good at just nipping in and harrying opposition players when they've got their back to goal and winning the ball back high up, all of that stuff. But compared to opposition championship players, JB just doesn't seem to have it in terms of getting those challenges in, and therefore he gets turned around and is chasing back and they're running at a back four. That happened too many times. I could probably live with it if he was excellent on the ball. He wasn't yesterday, gave the ball away too often. One really weak defensive header right on the edge of our penalty area as well. It was a poor afternoon for him, and still pretty young, you know. We saw flashes of his ability under Ian Foster more so than Wayne Rooney, I would say. But it's an area that we definitely need to strengthen, I think, because he's not showing enough for me, to be honest. And again, another one whose confidence must be pretty low right now.
Yeah, I think we've sort of come to the realization, haven't we? We've said it in the last couple of episodes on this podcast that perhaps it's going to come down to Darko JB, that we are a stepping stone on his career. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But perhaps somebody else is going to see the very best of Darko JB rather than we are as fans. Me being me, I still think there's enough of a player there to try and maybe take a gamble on him. I know gambling is the key word with decision making that's going on at the football club at the moment. I probably would still say that although it's not as consistent, the positive signs, I think there are still enough positive signs to say we can make a player out of Darko JB. Adam, I'm going to give you a bit of time to think, because I'd totally forgotten that we'd already chosen your player and we've already spoken about him. So I'll come to Sam. I'll come to Sam first, because lo and behold, Sam wants to talk about the man of the match.
Yeah, what I always say on this show is that I'll criticise somebody, but as much as I give criticism where due, I'll always give credit where it's due as well. And on that note, I think Dan Grimshaw had an absolutely fantastic game. Was man of the match, probably his best game in an Argyle shirt, and stopped it from being an embarrassing scoreline. He, like I say, made some absolutely incredible saves, both from Frey, the one first half where it fell to him one-on-one angled, and he really incredibly quick reflex save to get his hand down to palm the ball away. And then the one second half as well, where he had a bit more time. Frey had a bit more time as well. Got him one-on-one, squared to shoot, and Grimshaw again made brilliant use of his body as well. Really shaped himself well to get in that good position to make the one-on-one save. Obviously, I've never played the game at any level above a kick about with my mates, and even that I've never been very good. But I've always heard people who play the game as a goalkeeper will say half of the job of being a goalkeeper is before you make the save. It's what you do with your body before making the save. And that save in the second half was a perfect example of that. He made himself big before Frey then was able to get the shot away and made that save. And again, also not quite so spectacular, but still impressive save from Chair that unfortunately then fell to the young lad, I can't remember his name, who scored. And then obviously from that, I want to praise other aspects of his performance as well. I think his distribution's never been the problem. His distribution's always been good. But what really struck me is actually how quick his distribution was. He was, whenever he picked up the ball and tried to get out, he was always very much trying to sorry, one of the comments there amused me. Always very sort of rapidly getting rid of it. Always looking for somebody, and you could see he was getting a bit frustrated that people weren't showing enough runs for him at times, like rightly so. And actually, you know what? I will even give a little bit of praise to his command of area, which is probably the weakest part of his game by far normally. I think it was better. Still think that there's room for improvement. It still doesn't really catch very often, but it's better to go for it and punch it out than just to completely flap at it and stay on your line. And ultimately,
there was one moment.
Yeah.
There was one moment, Sam, you're talking about command of the area, where he came rushing out for a ball that he clearly wasn't going to be able to collect or something, to kick it away. And I actually sat there and I thought, well, he comes out for that, but he won't come off his line for a long throw in midweek. It's just a little bit frustrating.
It's almost as like someone has had a massive word with him between the Oxford game and the QPR game and said, you've got to come off your line. And maybe he took it a bit too literally on that occasion. That might have been the one time where he might have been better staying on his line. But yeah, command of area looked more proactive. So yeah, one swallow doesn't make a summer. I still think he's had probably more bad games for us than good. I'm not going to, completely U-turn on that, but credit where it's due. Very good performance yesterday, and makes me feel a little bit more relaxed that we don't have to rush Hazard back, that he'll get the Burnley game if needed, get the Sunderland game if needed, and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Do keep getting your questions in. We've already got plenty to go through at the end of tonight's show once we've previewed, or before we preview Burnley, sorry. And there are nearly 1,400 people watching, so huge thank you to that. Do remember to share the live stream around with all your friends. Try and get as many people in as we can, get as many thoughts shown on screen. Adam, I've delayed long enough. Your player, positive or negative?
Yeah, so it's third choice now, isn't it? Because I would have gone for Grimshaw, who I think was every bit as good yesterday as Connor Hazard was in the reverse fixture. I would have gone for Mumba, who wasn't quite as good, but we've discussed him to the death. So I'm going to go on the other side of the screen. Other side of the screen's on my mind. Must be that comment that's popped up. The other side of the defence, and go and look at Puhac, and which is how you say it. I'm reliably informed, and just cover a bit of why I feel as though he's more of a wing back, and why I wouldn't have wanted to see him in that left centre back position, in spite of obviously the problems that a back four causes us. Now, across his time, particularly, I think it was Kaiserslautern who was at last season, and to a lesser extent Kiel at the first half of this campaign, he's always been the sort of player who thrives going forward. He's almost, I've heard him described possibly by some of you guys as like Nathaniel Ogbeta plus, in the way that he's very much an attacking wing back with a little bit more to him, and I can absolutely see why. The amount of crosses he attempts, the amount of crosses he completes for someone in his position, very, very good. And there's been a few wayward ones, but I think generally speaking, he's been a lot more accurate than others we've seen as kind of pretenders to that throne before. which is great, which is great news and something useful to have in the camp. The problem I have is going the other way. So going back to his time, in the top 2 tiers in Germany, he's never been somebody that tackles very well. He's never been the sort of player to win a duel, turn it over, and then advance. You get the best out of him when you're in possession. You play it into space for him to run onto, or play it to him in order to allow him to run. He's very, very rare, in my experience, that you'll see him win the ball, turn, and then start running of his own accord. He needs that assistance there. So if we were to give him a purely defensive role, as to be fair, we did yesterday because he had to be a left back, even though, as Dan said, he did push forward an awful lot, particularly in that first half. You're going to struggle. And I think that proved. I think I saw that he had maybe 7 ground duels that he was involved in. He won 1 of them. That's not going to cut it as a defender at this level. Okay, we could argue it's a small sample size, but there's been much larger sample sizes when he's in Germany, where he's been posting similar numbers. So that worries me somewhat. It worries me particularly if we're going to go to a back 4. And we're assuming, by the way, that's not something we're going to see again, and I hope it's not. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a game on Wednesday, and it doesn't look like anyone's coming in. So that's where that's an area for improvement. And I've seen some comments coming in, of the fact that he can be a real asset to us, and I agree. He's one of those players who, when used correctly, if you play to the guy's strengths and negate his weaknesses, he could really shine in this system and at this level. I do genuinely believe that, because if you get him on the ball in good areas often, he will deliver. Added to the fact, by the way, his set pieces, which I thought, as much as didn't score from one, I thought were broadly played into some good areas yesterday and didn't quite come off. So he's a talent. He's a good talent. I don't think yesterday was necessarily his game, but it's something to build on. But if we're going forward, I don't really want to see conversations of, oh, shall we play Puhac left back? Should we play left centre back? Because from what I've seen and what I've looked at, it doesn't really suit him at all. I don't necessarily think he was a major weakness yesterday, but it certainly didn't help him that he had that extra defensive responsibility for me. And I'd rather we unleashed him going forward, if we can. A, by changing the system back, and B, by signing some bloody players. But one of those may be more likely than the other.
Yeah, we just about got away with it back in the League Two promotion season when we had to play Callum McFadden at left centre back for a little bit, didn't we? Probably because we were on the front foot and expecting to win most games. It seems very, very risky when we're trying to shore up the defence and scrap for every point and stay up to play someone as attacking as him at left centre back, doesn't it? So yeah, I agree with everything you said.
Similar vibes to Matt Butcher in the League One season as well. Or that very limited time he spent there. I seem to recall he did it in that MK game when we put 4 past them, but I don't think it was experimental.
But again, that was very much a game we were on the back foot. One and Cumming gifted a couple of our goals that day as well. It was as good as we were. Just to quickly interject on that, and I'm not disagreeing with anything either of you have said, but an open question then: if we don't get anyone in by Wednesday, what are we going to do? Because obviously Galloway's not fit, Such isn't fit. Oh, okay. Is that a question, Kevin? Yeah. Okay.
Keep it for the Burnley preview.
Okay.
We've still got plenty of talking points to get through yet.
Righto.
I just want to touch on Pasotti's man of the match poll. There were 216 votes, 198 of them went to Dan Grimshaw. A fair landslide, it's safe to say. Others who attracted votes, Julio Pleguezelo, who the aforementioned Julio, also known as Hibernian's Julio Pleguezelo.
Hibernian's Jose Pleguezelo.
Or Jose, sorry, yes, Jose
the
Pleguezelo.
defender.
The ex-Swansea Jose Pleguezelo. 9 votes for him. Puhac with 4. 3 for Victor Poulsen, who of course had a little cameo, giving us all flashbacks of Norris Bulvitis towards the end of yesterday's game up front, and Adam Randall attracting votes as well. Let's just go to a few of the comments in there. I think we know where this is going to go. Mr. Gillingham says a choice of 1. Manila Green, Grimshaw by a mile. Cousin Pavlos, obviously Grimshaw, who made some outstanding saves. Honourable mention for Pleggy. God, I'm depressed though after that. Mutley Marvel said Dan. maybe it was you, Dan Allard, who knows? Monster Green said it was an easy decision, and Doily43, Dan should get 100% of the votes. Once again, the Passotti poll is rather one-sided in a man of the match vote. Unless no, there is one thing I did want to touch on yesterday before we end the QPR chat and move it on to a slightly more emotive subject, is the substitutions yesterday, because it's got a lot of discourse in many places. The substitutions that were made, obviously, Darko JB hooked at halftime for Jordan Houghton, and then we had Callum Wright coming on for Rami El Hadj. We also had, who else do we have? Bundu came on for Hardy, and then Sorinola for Mumba, and the other change was, I'm looking at your direction, Sissoko for Beidou, wasn't it? I think was the other change. The one that was the two that were obvious for me was Houghton off, JB on. I think everybody in the ground could have probably called that was going to happen. I think I'm in a minority of one that actually didn't mind Rami Al Hadj coming off on the hour mark, because to my eyes, he was visibly exhausted. The bloke looked spent out there, and just because, yeah, all right, he was probably our only attacking outlet in the first half with Puhac on that left side, you had to bring him off, otherwise we risked not having him on Wednesday night, didn't we?
Yeah, I agree. He had a good first half. It was probably only really him and Randall of our outfielders that did have a good first half. But both of those two, Randall and especially Al Hadj, tired in the second half to an extent. And yeah, look, I think he's a good player. And I think it's the fact that Wayne Rooney completely throws him out when we had all our other creative outlets injured was barking mad. But even despite that, when he was that visibly blowing, we've got a game on Wednesday, we've got another game on Saturday, coming thick and fast. I can understand why he took him off. I'm not going to moan about that one. The thing I am going to slightly moan about is, bizarrely, because he wasn't considered a very good player up to very recently, it's no Sorinola. He was going on the best form of his Argyle career by a mile in that 4 or 5 games that he had in the team. And now he seemingly can't get a look in again. And I just think that for what Muslic wants, he wants, direct, he wants, pace, he wants hard workers, he wants players who are going to really put a shift in and whip crosses into the box. That's Sorinola to a T, right? He may not be the best crosser of the ball in the world. He may not be the best passer maybe in the world. He may have a couple mistakes defensively, but so does Mumba. Why, when he fits the bill of what we kind of want from this system very well, and he's in good form, have we given him a combined 2 minutes in the last 2 home games? That to me is a bit baffling.
Anybody else got anything to add on the substitutions? I mean, my gut feeling is that Sorinola, Bundu, and Sissoko didn't get more minutes because with Sorinola there has to be a muscle-related injury, and the other two we know are coming back off injury layoff. So I can only presume that they're just not fit.
I mean, that would feel like the only explanation, because the alternative is that he's not fancied bringing off the bench in circumstances like that, which would be strange. I think I'd put it. So I imagine you're right, if nothing else, because it's the more comfortable explanation.
Yeah, I'd go with that, and probably especially given that I think Bundu up front is a better fit for what we're looking to do, especially at home against a defence that isn't playing a super high line where we need Hardy to try and stretch them in behind. We need more of a physical presence to try and win ball and bring it down and bring those strong attacking 3 midfield players into play. Bundu would do that better for me than Ryan Hardy at the minute. So if he is fit enough to start, I'd be looking to start him on Wednesday, especially as against Burnley, I suppose thinking about it, Burnley might be quite aggressive, feel like they can play a high line, so we'd need Hardy's pace to push them back again a little bit. So I suppose actually we could look to play Hardy. But yeah, when it's a defence sitting a bit deeper and we can't get Hardy's pace in behind, we need someone more physical in there, and that for me, with the options we've got, is Bundu.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely agree. I've actually just had a really, really good thought in my head. Well, it sounds a good thought to me. I'm going to come back to it in the Burnley preview, and I will try and find a tin hat to put on before I come up with what I would do team-wise. So unless you've got anything in particular you want to touch on yesterday's game, then we will swiftly move it on to one of the big talking points that's going on right now. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Nobody's unmuting themselves, so I shall move on. Let's talk about where we're at, because we are now a fortnight away from transfer deadline day. Argyle Life will be live with you Monday, the 3rd of February from a time in the evening. We will be live. All the usual faces will be joining you. One of myself or Aaron or both of us will be in the hot seat. There's even a chance at the moment neither of us will be, but we'll sort that out between us. But you will be joining us for that, I'm sure. But at the moment, Adam's transfer centre is relatively quiet. And there's a big issue going on here, isn't there, lads, where we seem to be drifting a little bit, in my opinion. There's a lot of people being proactive around us in the league table, and I accept that we've only got a head coach in for a week and things can take time, but we did sign 2 players without a head coach, so surely with a head coach it would be a darn sight easier to sign a player.
Well, yeah, a cynic would say that having a head coach come in with a whole new style means we might have had to rip up our recruitment playbook and look for a whole other set of players. But I'm not a cynic, so it's good if I'm not saying that. No, I think there is an aspect of that.
Hang on a minute. Sam Down is not a cynic.
I'm being a bit mischievous. I think there is an aspect of what I've said, but without a doubt, because naturally, different formation, different style, you are going to look for different player profiles, of course. So it's going to be a bit of a, rewriting. Maybe it's about, negotiating with players, getting bounced about a bit for bids. Maybe January is a premium if you're bidding for players. I had a bit of a memory earlier of something my old nan, rest in peace, used to say, which is that down this part of the world, we spend 7 years thinking about it, 7 years talking about it, and 7 years doing it. And that seems a bit like what Argyle are at the minute with everything we do. Yeah, we didn't headhunt a head coach. We went for a long process. It took us, quite a bit of time for whatever reason to announce that Neil Dewslip had gone. And I think we all clearly knew it about 2 weeks before. And now we're, despite having clearly tried to sign Beidou on deadline day, that's not just speculation, because Beidou himself said it on Argyle TV. So clearly the money for the Beidou bid was left over from the summer budget. So we've had money left over from the summer budget. We've also had the extra money that Simon Hallett said he was going to front up. And we've had the sale come in of Lewis Gibson, Adam Forshaw off the wage bill, Andre Gray off the wage bill, all these, sources of revenue to the club. Probably about 100 odd people signed up for Evergreen, hoping that we're going to get Liverpool tickets. We've had all these the money that we could be spending, and yeah, it's just we've only got 2 players in the door, and I don't quite know why that is.
Let's be fair, Sam. We've got 2 players in the door, and one of them was agreed in September. Like, we cannot, although it's been ratified as a January transfer, this isn't us being proactive in the January transfer window. This was done anyway.
And look, I know people will always say there's stuff going on behind the scenes. I know there is. I'm not stupid. I'm not saying that we're not trying to sign anybody, but there has to be a bit of pressure now, because I think there's a bit of a mindset that it's almost like the football stops for a month in January and then you come back with your new squad. It's not like that at all. Every point matters. Like, if we are going to go up, we're certainly not going to go up. Every point matters if we are going to stay up. Like I said, I think we probably now need 29 points from 19 games. That's borderline playoff form that we're going to need if we're going to stay up, by the way, over the next 19 games. Now, maybe we might not need that much. It may be that, a team has a really bad run and we maybe only need, say we only need 47 points. That's still a lot. That's still 26 from 19. That's still top half form. Basically, there isn't, going into games against Burnley and Sunderland, there isn't any way that we're going to stay up, I don't think, without producing at least top half form between now and the rest of the season. Maybe more like top 6 form if we crunch the numbers on it. Every single game counts to get players in. Sometimes in January, you do have to overspend a little bit. It's not ideal. It's not the way we normally do things, but it's, it's certainly going to be, it's going to be that, or it's going to be we can sign ourselves to relegation. And look, don't get me wrong, I think we're going down anyway. So maybe I'm talking myself out of it. Maybe because maybe the logic is if we're in this span of position that we don't need to stretch ourselves so much. And perhaps in a way there might be a kind of perverse logic to that in a way. But we also want to build a team that's going to settle and going to have the best chance to get back up if we do go down. So it just, to me, I'm not saying they're not trying. I'm not saying there's nothing going on behind the scenes, but I think there's perhaps not the urgency, or at least the appearance of not the urgency, that every single game counts. We need to get players in the door now to give ourselves any hope at all. It all seems
my issue with it is, and it probably stems back from the moment we got promotion to the Championship, is that you go back to that first summer under Schumacher in the Championship last year. We knew that Sam Cosgrove was only on loan. We knew Niall Ennis was leaving. We didn't sign a replacement striker. We went into deadline day. We signed Bundu and tried to make him into a striker when we all know he's a winger. We then went into the January transfer window with Ian Foster, still not having another striker on the books, and didn't sign another striker to help us out. This is when Ryan Hardy, as we all know, he emptied the tank against Cardiff at home last season and has never been the same player since, because he was going in, week out, up front. We've gone in, we stay up after the mess of the Foster appointment, which is another sad turn of events from the boardroom. We then stay up. The place is euphoric. We have positivity. You're thinking, make a sensible appointment. We go and get Wayne Rooney. And as we all know, there wasn't a metric in the land, an ideology that suggested Wayne Rooney was the right man for the job. Of course, this is after appointing Ian Foster and not giving him a backroom staff. We appointed Wayne Rooney. We gave him an assistant in Pete Shuttleworth, who then left. We gave him Mike Phelan. We then got rid of Rooney a few weeks later after bringing Mike Phelan in. We then, obviously, 10 days, got Miran Muslic in. We've had this statement from Simon Hallett telling us about, with record turnover, income, revenue, all of this, we're doing so well off the field. We've got the Brickfields project. We've got this. We've got that. That's all well and good. But you're not going to have those streams of income and revenue when your product on the pitch is as bad as it is at the moment. You had Julio Pleguezuelo come out after the game and basically plead for more bodies to come into the dressing room. You've got Miran Muslic coming out in the press after the game and saying that the fans deserve better. We as an organisation haven't served them anything positive in the last 6 months. It's real mind-blowing here. And this is why I'm not here leading a campaign that people should get sacked or we need to change the board or anything like that, because the body of work for the last 5, 6, 7 years has been exemplary from them. However, there are real questions that now need to be put to the decision makers at this football club. And I'm making a direct appeal now. We need a fans forum whenever the chairman is next in the country. And I'm not talking a fans forum in a working men's club an hour and a half down the road in St Austell. I'm talking a fans forum at Home Park where honest questions can be asked, because there are issues at play here that are really suggesting that the board are drifting towards League One relegation. Now, they may well feel that's harsh. I understand that, and I get it. However, we need to be proactive, and I hate to say it, the last 18 months, I've found our decision-making to be reactive. I mean, what are we saying here, Adam, Dan? I mean, what needs to happen? Because we're hearing about the investment that's coming, and we know the EFL can take as long as they want over ratifying investment. But until at the moment, the board is seeing 17,000 come through the gate every week. They're seeing people buy hats, scarves, evergreen membership, Argyle TV subscriptions. They're seeing all this income and revenue. But the fact of the matter is, now that Neil Dewsnip has gone, there isn't a single footballing person on that board. They're all businessmen.
Yeah.
The football product is being left behind here, isn't it?
I'm going to go back actually to something that a kind of throwaway phrase from earlier that so much of this is self-inflicted, which is it is true, and that's a serious concern to be levelled at the board. Nobody forced them in January last year to hire a totally untested head coach at Championship level. Nobody forced them to go through that process exactly the same 4 months later and hire Wayne Rooney, who, well, to his credit, did have experience at Championship level. It was awful experience. Nobody forced that, and nobody's forced them to take the risk this time around with Muslic either. I am a cynic, as it happens, and I agree with Sam in the sense that bringing a new style of play in does eventually and leads to that that transfer window being rewritten, as it were. But nobody forced it. Nobody's come in and forced Plymouth Argyle to change their style of play halfway through the season. We've done that to ourselves. And when you look at it and go, oh, we have sympathy, yeah, it's a little bit more difficult than it would have been before. You made it difficult. You made it more difficult for yourselves with the decisions you've taken over the last 18 months. I have absolutely no sympathy at all. Now, by the way, totally agree with Joe with your point, or a couple of your points. One, not having a football person on the board is deeply concerning, and I think it's led to quite a few of the issues we have at the moment. Two, a fans forum is paramount at this point, and I agree it can't be held, in a room with about 20 people in it 2 hours down the road. It needs to be as central as possible to get as many people there. But again, I mean, surely successful businessmen, which we have at the helm here, can understand that if we continue going backwards the way we are, we're not going to be making as much money as we were in the Championship. I mean, that's basic stuff, right? It's sometimes football clubs go in this direction because they're unlucky. Sometimes football clubs go in this direction because there's been some financial mismanagement, and they found themselves here. Not a lot of clubs go in this direction purely because of the decisions they've made and the dithering that's gone on in the background, and that's what's happening at the minute. Nobody forced us to be in the situation we are now. We have done this to ourselves, and the board have serious questions to answer if it continues on. Now, I recognise that's a bit extreme, 2 games into a new head coach's spell, and hey, we don't know what's going to happen in football. Miran Muslic long term could certainly be a success. I'd run through bricks walls for him, as everybody else would, but this isn't hole in the wall, this is football. So ultimately, something will have to give soon enough. And if it turns out that this is another poor appointment, this is another one where, for some bizarre reason, we've ignored some obvious options and tried to be too clever, and our owner and chairman has gone, look at me, I'm the smartest guy in the room. If it happens again and it fails again, it's on his head, I'm afraid. Serious questions to answer. We'll see how it goes, but those need to be answered at a fan forum. I agree.
Dan, I just want to jump in because I know you want to make a point on this as well. Kevin Jones has made a comment for the audio listeners on YouTube. It said, where we can tell them how awful they've been saving our club. Nobody is disputing the body of work that this board have put in over a number of recent years in getting us to the Championship. That isn't in question here. What's in question is the last 18 months of decision making that's going on. And now we're going into a transfer window without a footballing person on the board. Like, just because the body of work has been good up to now doesn't mean they're immune to any criticism and any negativity. The thing is, because they've put themselves on such a good platform with so much good work, we now expect such a standard. And now that it feels like it's slipped below a standard, surely we're right to call it out and ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the point I was going to make, and it's a belief I've always had, is that no matter how good or popular an owner or a chairman is, they are only ever 2 bad managerial appointments away from being strongly disliked from fans, and we're seeing that now with Foster and then Rooney. Muslic is key to Simon Hallett's popularity at this football club, I believe. If if this goes wrong, and I don't know whether it's going to go right or wrong yet. None of us do. We've only had 2 games. Then I think a lot of people will have just lost faith in the running of the club and their ability to appoint the right people on the footballing side of things. We'll almost certainly be back in League One. Will we be able to challenge, that type of thing? In terms of this transfer window, I think it is essential that we get the right players in. I know people want to see things now and quickly and all of this stuff. We've still got 2 weeks to go until the end of the transfer window, 3 more games. And I know that's another 3 games where we wouldn't have those bodies in, but we need to get the right players in. And I'm not going to criticise yet their recruitment. If we get to the end of the transfer window and we haven't at least got a centre-back, a centre-mid and a striker in to bolster the squad, or if we get those players in and they turn out to not be good enough, as some of our transfers have been this last 18 months, then we really have we've got serious issues. It's highly frustrating because if you go back to summer 2023, Simon Hallett was quite rightly absolutely adored by our fans. He'd done so much good in taking us from he did take us down, under in the Derek Adams season 2018-19, but then we went back up, we went up again, and we really looked like we were getting all sorts of plaudits from all angles as being such a well-run football club. And we were absolutely right to get those plaudits. And it's just so frustrating now, as you said, Joe, that, we hold those high standards and high expectations of them, and then they pull such a baffling thing. I mean, the Foster thing was a gamble that didn't work. The Muslic appointment, hopefully, is a gamble, as Hallett says, that will work. But the Rooney appointment was completely and utterly balmy. And as Adam alluded to, I think there was some level of arrogance involved in that appointment, which is really, really frustrating, because we don't want you to prove how clever you are. We want you to make the right appointment for this football club. And with Wayne Rooney, they didn't do that. They ignored it, and it's cost us. And that's why we're now at the bottom of the league.
And one thing I will say is that, I would love nothing more than for Argyle to now go out and sign 3 or 4 players that really turn the side around, give us a bit of quality, and we do stay up. And I will be the first person on this podcast to laud the board for doing it and for backing Miran Muslic. But the first thing he needs is his support staff in the building, and he needs bodies that he can call upon on the pitch. We as fans, all we can do is go out there and support it. Now it's on the decision makers and those in charge at Home Park to give the head coach the tools he needs to pull off this escape. And Phil Bayliss just asked on YouTube, what benefit would a group of supporters having a moan at a forum do? It would be exactly our right to challenge our decision makers. That's what a fans forum is. It gives us a platform to ask questions that we don't get to ask. And look, some people may feel a fans forum is needed, some people may not. And as some people are saying in the comments about Chansiri at Sheffield Wednesday, I don't want that. I don't want an owner like that. I feel like we're incredibly lucky to have Simon Hallett in charge of our football club. But as I've said earlier, that doesn't, just because that they've set such a high bar for so many years, doesn't mean that when standards slip slightly, and it's not a major slip, but when standards slip slightly, we are allowed to ask questions and we are allowed to be a little bit critical of what's going on. So I'll say no more for now. Hopefully we do get a fans forum at some point, because after all, we are such an open and transparent football club, and we do often enjoy the fans forums, don't we? So let's see if one of them comes to pass. 1 hour and 10 minutes we've been going so far. I think what we'll do now, lads, unless you've got anything in particular you want to touch on, I will go on to questions and then we will touch on Burnley. Anybody got AOBs before we move it on?
I just wanted to say really quickly, sorry, Sam, I just wanted to say about, it seems like the news is coming out that Sam Morecambe, our lead performance analyst, is off to Everton. Just wanted to wish him the best of luck. He's a really good guy, and I'm without knowing his quality of work, knowing him personally, I'm sure that our decline is despite him and not because of him. And it's clear that Everton have seen the potential in him on the analysis side of things, and just wish him all the best of luck.
Yeah, echo that. Really great guy. Sam spoke to him after the Leicester game last season when we were all in total euphoria, and known him for a while before he started work at Argyle, and been great chatting to him after games. And I know it was sort of his dream he was living, but now he's got an even better dream working in the Premier League club. So the best wishes to him, and hope he does brilliantly there. Sure he will. Just to quickly reverse back onto the point about where we are and all the rest of it. To be honest with you, I think all three of you have said it absolutely fantastically. There's probably not a lot more I can say that what's already been said. Only to say that we're not just moaning because we like a moan. That might seem like that at times, but we're moaning because we care about this football club and we want it not to be in the shambles it's been in on and off for the past 18 months. I think ever since we've gone up to this league, pretty much 75% of it has been dreadful. Thankfully, the 25 that wasn't is what kept us up, which being the good start to the season under Schumacher, and then being the good spell under Dewslip as the caretaker manager. So ultimately, like, we're not doing this just because we like to create content for moaning and ranting. We're doing it because it is so easy to misstep. It is easy to, if stuff goes wrong, and mistakes can have very big consequences at this level. I think the recruitment hasn't been great since we got back up this league, with some very obvious exceptions of players who we carried over from the League One era, who we then converted into a permanent. Looking at like, for example, the managerial hires. I mean, Dan covered that one brilliantly. Looking at, for example, some of the stuff off the pitch as well. I know Finn has obviously given great talk about the PA side of things, and the way they handled that wasn't very good. It just seems like that togetherness, that sense of unity that we had in 2023 when it's reached that peak. And I remember saying at the time, as a sort of maybe I said it in a bit of a generic platitude of enjoy the good times because they'll go quicker than you think. And perhaps I didn't realise quite how quickly they would go, to be honest with you. And it seems like we're on for an absolute stinker of a season. And maybe we've got one more great escape in us. Maybe. I doubt it, to be honest. But we'll see how it goes. And I just hope that if we do go down, as long as it's not shambolically, performance every week, as long as we can see signs that Muslic is starting to implement the style of play he wants, I just hope that we go down respectably, can get a new director of football in, someone who's going to run the footballing side of the club for the next 5 to 10 years, that we do finally, hopefully, maybe get some investment over the line, and that we put us, sell Whittaker for the highest fee we can, realistically, possibly sell Mumba, depending on how solid that interest is. And with all that, we just put ourselves in a position to get the very best, squad together we can for a promotion season out of League One. Because let's not forget, for all my criticism, and I don't disagree with any of it, the bigger picture is still not terrible. We are still very, very profitable as a club. We are still making long-term investment in the youth infrastructure in Fulston Park. And we are still, if we do go down, going to have probably a bigger budget than when we were last in this league. So all of that being said, the big picture still isn't terrible. But as Joe also said, it doesn't matter how good the big picture is, when it's a complete, car crash as it is in the short term, in the day-to-day stuff, that's going to ruin it. And it is starting to ruin it. So we've all agreed, and I know I've probably talked longer than I should have done. I said I didn't have much to add, and I've added about 4 minutes actually for you, isn't it? But just see how this goes, because I think it's going to turn quite unpleasant around Home Park if we have too many more performances like yesterday's.
And as Sam says, just to finish off this point, because we are going to go to questions now, then we're going to get a Burnley preview done quickly. We don't do this. We're not making this, or I'm not making this plea. I don't know why I'm speaking for everybody else. So I'm not making this plea as a podcaster trying to get views and likes and interactions. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I love the club, and I am desperate for us to stay in the Championship. And I'm desperate. We just want some answers to some questions. As fans, that's all we want. And we want the opportunity to do it. So hopefully it'll get done. If it doesn't get done, then so be it. It doesn't make a difference as long as we stay in the Championship. And I just want us to do everything we can as a club to stay up. And as fans, I guess the only way we can do that is by being united and getting behind the team. And hopefully on Wednesday night, we have one of those siege mentality atmospheres at home park like we had against Leicester last year, where we create something special under the lights in front of the nation on Sky Sports. But a little bit more of that coming up very soon, because we are going to talk about Burnley. I will get to your comments. I know they're flying in very quickly. Nearly 2,000 people are watching at the moment. We're going to fly through some questions. So do try and keep the answers to a premium if you can, lads. I know we joke about that quite a lot, but if we can, it would be great, because we do still have to preview Burnley. Martí H on YouTube says, is Sissoko really lacking in fitness? He's reduced to 10-minute cameos in games like yesterday where we were offering nothing offensively. I think we touched on that a little bit earlier, isn't it? It's glaringly obvious that he isn't quite 100% at the moment. The same questionnaire, from Martí H. Is there a possibility of Obafemi going back to free up a loan space, or am I reading too much into his absence yesterday? Adam, I'll come to you on this. Try and keep it as brief as you can, because Miran Muslic did in his post-match press conference. It all seemed that if Obafemi was going to get game time, it would have been yesterday, because he can't play on Wednesday night and he was omitted from the squad.
Yeah, it's looking quite likely at the moment, which I don't necessarily think would be a great loss, considering how it's gone, and I don't think he fits the system at all, so that would be absolutely fine. Obviously, my standard line on how loan slots operate, where we don't necessarily need to send him back, we could just leave him out of the squad as we did yesterday, still applies. So it's not as if we need to send him back in order to bring in a loan. So hopefully the club are working on that. But yeah, it would be a surprise to see him play for Plymouth Argyle again. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and as I said, he certainly won't be involved. Not Wednesday night. Losing track of my days. Almost like Christmas again. Sam, this is probably one more for you. Robin's Nest asked, when was the last time we finished bottom of a division?
Yeah, I saw that one waiting for me, and I don't know. We haven't in a while, because it was 23rd when we went down out of this league. It was 23rd when we went down under Peter Reid. It was 21st when we went down under Derek Adams. Those are the 3 relegations in my time as a fan. It was. Yeah, it was. We went down obviously in the 90s when we got relegated into the bottom tier. I think that was 21st, because a draw would have kept us up final day. We went down when we got relegated for the first time into the bottom tier, just before Warnock did in the infamous Peter Swan season. I think that we were 22nd, I think. And when we went down in 92 under Shilton, that was, I think, again, a final day relegation, 22nd again in obviously the second tier now. Yeah, comment coming in from Ollie saying I'm letting
Sam,
the side down. I don't disagree.
I think I'm going to outdo you here, Sam. I think it was 1968 when we got relegated from the second tier.
If Dan's outdone me, then I would
Feel
take
free to fact check that, guys.
So we've not come bottom according to
Dan's corner on the next stream.
Yeah.
Hit me up, pie face.
I think we need contributors to Greens on Screen. Those guys will certainly know when the last time we finished bottom of the respective division would be. Dan, I'll come to you on this one. Actually, I'll get a simple yes or no answer from the lot of you, really. Lazy Lunatic 13 on YouTube asks, average point stay up in the Championship in the last 14 seasons is 45, whether the highest 3 were 55, 52, 51, which was last year. I'm going for an optimistic 48. Will that be enough?
No.
Yes, just.
I mean, impossible, isn't it? Well, what I will say is we're probably not going to get there anyway, so it's a moot point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, is that whilst 48 might be enough for somebody to escape relegation, whether or not Plymouth Argyle Football Club will get to 48, that is a totally different ball game.
Not with our goal, I don't think. That
No.
would have to be on 47. And looking at the form Pompey are on, the form Hull are on, Luton just replaced the manager. I don't see it. I don't see 3 teams having 47 or fewer, to be honest.
Richard Sloman on YouTube asks, any chance of TJ being fit for Wednesday? Of course, we also saw those pictures of TJ being involved in training last week. I think we'll find out a little bit more in the press conference this week from Miron. I think hopefully we might have some good news before Wednesday night's team sheets announced. Either A, in terms of him getting some backroom staff in, or B, whether or not we can get a signing over the line. Adam, are there any rumours of an incoming?
I mean, worryingly, no. Not since at least we last spoke on it. There's earlier in the window, I mentioned Low earlier. There's Kipriano as well at Peterborough, the midfielder who has been linked to us. But honestly, it's been slim pickings. Which it's eased my workload, but I don't like it. I mean, I'd much rather the transfer centre was seeing plenty of updates on the daily. But yeah, most of the things from anyone that's even borderline reliable have been looking at outgoings. So yeah, I mean, you could argue maybe this is a sign that the club have stopped some of the leaks and we've got something working in the background. I really hope we have. But yeah, in terms of rumours, there's very, very thin on the ground at the moment.
Sorry to button again. Kind of worryingly on that though, even though the club might have stopped the leaks, stuff still leaks through the player side and through the agent side. We knew Beidou and Puach were coming about 3 days before it got announced in both cases. So
yeah,
I really hope that it's all if we're still like 3 or 4 days away, then that's a concern, because
it's very much hope against expectation on that front. I'd be more surprised than not if anybody's coming in, particularly be registered in time to play on Wednesday night.
Talking of Wednesday night's opponents, of course, Adam, in talk of outgoings, there's been a lot of links to Morgan Whittaker. Jacques asking, will we see Morgan Whittaker play again for Plymouth Argyle? What do we all think? My gut feeling is yes. I know Sam has a different view to that, but
my gut feeling is no, based on Muslic's heavily hinted comments in the press conference, based on Hallett's words about player sales being part of our process, and just based on the rumours that Burnley are coming in with a bigger bid. You know what? I think if we were playing anyone else on Wednesday night, I think he probably would have one more game before being sold. But given the fact we are playing Burnley and the unsettlement of that in his head, given that he might be going there, I think it'll be one of those without the squad with like a calf strain or whatever, or an illness, and he just won't play. That's,
and I guess
or
the alternative,
a dead leg.
Alternative is that ultimately it could be one of those where it works the opposite way. The deal's not quite done yet, and he feels like he needs to put himself in the shop window for his future employers. Yeah, my gut feeling, as a long way of saying my gut feeling, is that we will see him again. We possibly won't see him again for very long. And I know we've had this debate before. I think we've reached a stage where cashing in is probably the right way to go, because it's not like last season where it feels as though this is a difference between staying up and going down. Unless something dramatic happens, we're probably going to go down with or without Whittaker, so we may as well get the money where we can.
Dan, very quickly, does Morgan Whittaker see out the transfer window as an Argyle player or not?
Probably not. It seems like the rumours are kind of the vultures are circling in terms of where he's going to go, and it would probably make business sense if we can get a good amount of money for him and reinvest that quickly in a couple of quality additions throughout the team. That it would make sense that now is the time. It would be with a heavy heart, because he's a fantastic player, and I do think if Muslic got the most out of him, he might be able to keep us up kind of single-handedly. But yeah, it might well be soon his Argyle swan song, if not already, as Sam said, and that would be with a heavy heart, because what he did in both the promotion-winning season and especially at the start of last season will live long in the memory for sure.
I would hope that if we are going to be sanctioning a transfer of Morgan Whittaker, we're not going to do so without an adequate replacement already being lined up. such as the forethinking of Argyle's board, as we heard from Andrew Parkinson on the breakfast show on Saturday morning. One final question. It's a recurring question, it seems, these days. Jay Sharkey asking, can we please talk about Ryan Hardy? 1 goal from open play in 34 games, nearly 12 months. Look, everyone, all 2,000 of you watching now know my thoughts on Ryan Hardy and how much of a staunch defender I am. I don't think it was down to a lack of work rate yesterday that he didn't get any joy. What do we think on Hardy, lads? Is there anything we need to touch on here that we haven't mentioned in previous episodes, in particular in recent weeks?
Only to say it again, and as much as I'm, maybe yesterday this wasn't the case because we were so appalling yesterday. I do still think generally, despite his lack of goals, we are generally a bit better in the team with him, not just because he stretches defenders more than Obafemi and Gray did. That being very clearly said, we need a new top draw centre forward, certainly if we're moving to this more direct style. A question again from Ollie, who's been a regular in the comments this evening. He asked about if we could name 5 players, and I'm not going to name all 5 because I know that Joe's face is panicking at that from the timing side of it. But tell you what, as a left field shout, I'm going to name a player who was linked with Wrexham, who I think if Wrexham could afford him, hopefully we can as well. And that player, and Joe's not going to like this, it's Patrick.
Wrexham are financed by Hollywood.
Yeah, but we also have the TV money. Anyway, that player is Patrick Bamford from Leeds. And hear me out, because I know he's a player who has got a bit of a stick for being a bit of a donkey in some regards. But that season under Bielsa, when they got promoted, and even the season that had a near miss, Bamford was a fantastic player. And what he is a real pressing forward. He is exactly Muslic's platonic idea of a centre forward. And if this Muslic style is going to be modelled on Bielsa ball, then it's going to be direct, but it's going to be fun direct. It's going to be energetic direct. It's not just going to be deep blocks. He is a player who played that style under Marcelo Bielsa at Leeds to great effect. Now, granted, yes, he is a few years older and a bit injury prone. That's why Leeds are getting rid of him. But is it not worth like a 6-month loan deal for our pressing forward, target man? I'm the only one who seems to think this. The comments are not sympathetic, but that was just my rogue left field shout of a player. There we go.
Patrick Bamford. Deary me. No. People who follow my Twitter account will know just how much of a fraud I think Patrick Bamford actually is as a league striker. I can't have it. Either of you two want to jump in on Sam's dream of signing Patrick Bamford on loan?
Well, all I'd say is if we don't improve our quality of playing up the pitch and we're ending up just hoofing it, we might as well get John Parkin out of retirement and stick him up front, because that's what we'd need.
Big John Parkin. Dorking Wanderers mascot John Parkin, of course. Adam, will you be writing a transfer centre piece now off the back of Sam Down talking about Patrick Bamford?
I've often been of the opinion that it would be fun to set up a rumour and see how much traction we could get it organically. I don't think this is the one, sadly, but hey, who knows? I mean, there's probably been worse shouts. Nothing I can think of off the top of my head, but there's probably been worse.
Yeah, Patrick Bamford is not one that would be anywhere near my target list, but there we go. Probably why I'm not in the world of recruitment. That's it then. No, there isn't. I've got a couple more questions from Twitter. Incidentally, Jack Leslie, who usually pops up in the comments but isn't at the moment, asked, where's Aaron? Is he on a secondment somewhere? No, Aaron will be back. In fact, Aaron will be back on Thursday and Sunday. You get a double dose of Aaron Hocking this week. So all those Aaron fans in the comments, you will get your wish this weekend. I'm having a weekend off because I'm actually flying to the northeast on Thursday for the trip to Sunderland. I'm sure George Wood, who pops up in the comments, will be delighted to know that I am going to another away game. Albeit I have the luxury of not sitting in the away end. I'm actually sitting in the home end for this one, bang on the halfway line. So I've got a nice plush seat for this away trip.
Ready to see us double over Sunderland.
Well, hopefully, yeah, it'd be nice. I'd get a few bragging rights if that was the case. Put it that way. Let's have a look at some of the other Twitter comments. Most of them were about where the club is at the moment, to be honest. Ryan at Argyle Flyer saying the calls from some quarters for Hallett to go were far, far over the top. That said, appointing Rooney was the worst. Was appointing Rooney the worst decision the club has made during his tenure? Dan, do you want to take that one?
Yes.
Good. Moving swiftly on. Most of them were about Bali, and we've touched on that, and also about the general state of the club. So we've gone over most of that. So that is essentially all of the questions that we've had so far. If we do get any more in, we will come to them. But we are now 90 minutes in, so we're going to go into stoppage time, and we're going to discuss Burnley away. So, lads, Scott Parker, who brings his hugely exciting Burnley, the free-flowing Burnley to town on Wednesday night, all 31 goals scored and 9 conceded. Of course, they got away with the fact that Wilson Isidore could have had a hat-trick on Friday night and missed 2 penalties and put a one-on-one into the base of the post. I'm going to kick this off. We're not going to go into a great big deep dive on Burnley because I'm sure Adam, with all the time that he's not had updating the transfer centre, will write us a full in-depth preview on this one. I'm going to kick off with this really wild thought I've had regarding the team that we should play on Wednesday. And I'm only saying it now because I'm going to forget it by the time it comes around to asking one of you about the team. Am I crazy to think that if we're going 4 at the back, if there's no defenders back and we can't change the system, am I wrong in thinking that Darko JB needs a rest? You drop Michael Baidoo back to play alongside Adam Randall to get him on the ball more. You play Rami Al-Haj in the 10, which is his position. You play Bundu through the centre. And here's one for you. To get Ryan Hardy playing to his strengths in the channel, you play him wide. Thoughts?
I don't think Baidoo's the number 8. I don't think he's the number 9 either, but I don't think he's number 8. I think he's all about the attacking midfield. And I just think Baidoo was, again, I'm going back on to the previous guy. I think Baidoo was very poor yesterday. I think he was decent at Brentford, but I think he was poor in the 2 home games. And I think he is, let's not forget, he is coming off his close season because Sweden have a summer season because of the weather there. So he is not up to the sharpness. But I do think from Baidoo, the best chance is getting him on the ball, getting him in between the lines. I don't think he's a deep line player next to Randall. I don't think he's a number 8 at all. I think he's either a number 10 or he's a winger. So I'm not a lover of that, Joe, I have to say. I think I would go back to I'm going to, after my Patrick Bamford chat, I'm going to name another very controversial name here in terms of who I would actually play. I'm going to say we're going to go back to a back 3 because, as we said, back 4 is not going well. I agree that we're not going to have Pushka as the left centre back for all the reasons Adam said. But Galloway's not fit. Such isn't fit. We're probably not getting anyone in. I'm going to go left centre back Saxton early because he has been recalled from Lincoln. Now, the only downside to that would be that if we do play him, we can't then loan him out again because you can't play for 3 clubs in a season. But you know what? I just think he is that bit more defensive. It still allows Pushka to be that wing back, getting up and down the line, whipping crosses in. And I just think that Early might not be, a natural left centre back, but he would, if it's in the back 4, he would be a left back. So maybe he can just adapt a little bit to be left centre back in a back 3. It just fills a gap. And I know that we're sort of sacrificing him in that regard because then it means he can't go back out on loan again. So he's then probably going to be a lot of time sitting around between now and May, twiddling his thumbs. But hey, if he plays well enough, he can stay in the team. Or maybe get a go at wing back as a sub option, rotation option. So I would go Saxon early. It's a bit of a crazy one, but that's what I would go. And I'd go, so obviously Pleggy, Paulson early, Grimshaw, Sorinola, and Puach, and then Randall and someone. There's sort of crazy devilment in me wants to say Caleb Roberts after how well he played at Brentford, but I don't know. Roberts or Houghton, certainly not JB. And then the front three of the 3-4-3 being, on my suspicion, Whittaker doesn't play, being Al Hadj and Beidou either side of Hardy. Is how I set up.
The main man of the podcast, Aaron Hocking, hopefully no longer talking to us from his bath, is demanding that Adam and Dan save the day here, and that me and Sam have completely lost our marbles in the two suggestions we've come up with. Adam or Dan, please try and shed some normality into what we can expect from the Burnley game.
Problem is, to be clear, I'm not a fan of either of those shouts. Sorry, but I don't see much of what we can do either. I mean, you possibly looking at 2, maybe 3 changes, but the shape's got to stay the same, and that's, again, it's not a shape that I like. I think I've made that clear. But what else can you do? If what else can you do is play Michael Beidou as a defensive midfielder or Saxon Early as a left centre back, then maybe you're better sticking, not twisting. I don't know. Yeah, I think depending on fitness, Soranola's certainly earned to start. I think in the midfield, to be honest, one shout that I do like, and I wouldn't be so against as I would Early or Beidou in those, is Caleb Roberts in the middle. I think it would be a good opportunity for him to come in and in a situation where he probably suits the setup better than Houghton does. He probably comes in for JB, who's needing a rest, and if he plays well, he keeps his place in the side. Going forward, again, this is all fitness dependent, because ultimately fitting the ones in the team are fitting Al Hadj, Beidou, Whittaker, Hardy, Bundu, names I've undoubtedly missed somewhere else in the team doesn't work, and you've got to find someone to sit out or someone to slot in somewhere. Sissoko's the obvious one that I didn't mention, but again, that's fitness dependent. But if he is available, he needs to play a bit more than 10 minutes. If Bundu's available, I think it would make a lot more sense actually to have him on the left rather than Al Hadj as we did last time. I think he'd have offered more. I think Al Hadj is the better player, but I think in that position, Bundu certainly has the edge. And up front, I guess you stick with Ryan Hardy unless you've got availability from Mohamed Tijani, who is another great unknown. It's a little bit sad, really, that we're going through this, and this is the best we can do. And hey, I laugh at the suggestions about Beidou defensive mid and Early left centre back, but they haven't been made, in order to spite us. They've been made as a reflection of the situation we're in and what could potentially get the best out of us, which in many ways is completely fair enough. And I think it's just indicative of the situation we find ourselves in, that these are the depths we're going to. And I don't think sticking with this shape is a nice suggestion either. I think it's the lesser of all evils, and that's where we find ourselves right now.
We should say, Dan, that we're talking about this purely on the back of not knowing if we're going to get anybody else in the door by Wednesday night, which, Miran Muslic did sound hopeful that there might be 1 or 2 bodies in at some point next week. Whether or not it was for this game or not's another thing. Of all the suggestions that we've had, whilst mine and Sam were slightly left field, I think Adam's certainly come up with a more rational take of them all. Are we actually maybe overcomplicating this somewhat? And with what's available to us, the only change might actually just be some either Roberts or Houghton for Darko JB?
It might well be, but I think that given the issues where we've, like I say, with the lack of protection of the back four, and given who we're playing, given how strong a force Burnley are in this league, I would stick with the back four because we have to for the time being. Obviously, as you say, assuming no players come in, and let's assume Whittaker is still here as well. I'd stick with the back four, but change the shape to a 4-3-3. So we've got that pivot, the guy just sitting in front of the back four can drop in and create a third centre back when we need it to, and just offer that extra support. And it also then allows, I would stick with Randall and JB as a result of that, because it allows them to push higher up the pitch with that protector behind them. And Jordan Houghton is the person I would put in there. As I said earlier, it proved how good he is in that role last season, playing with his back to goal. Soranola's got to come in at right back. Left back is a tricky one. I'd be tempted to move Bali back to the left side where I prefer him, but it's a flat back four. But it probably would go Puhach left back, Paulson and Pleggy obvious, which then leaves the front three. As Adam said, if Tijani is fit, I think it'd be really handy to have him there. But probably Hardy. I'm kind of undecided. Hardy, maybe Bundu as more of a presence up top to hold the ball up. And then Whittaker and probably Badu either side gives Al Hadj a chance to kind of come off the bench and create an impact. As we said, he looked pretty tired, and I'd be pretty sure that was why he was hooked after an hour. Callum Wright came on and didn't do a lot, to be brutally honest. But hopefully Al Hadj can kind of make a real impact off the bench, and then be good to go again starting on Saturday. So that's probably what I'd do. Probably if pushed, I'd probably say Bundu up top, Whittaker on the right, Badu on the left, and then, like I say, that protector in front of the back four to allow Randall and JB to really go and press. And if sometimes they get beaten, at least we got that guy behind him to sit in front of the back four. But it's just pivotal that we don't go behind in this game, because with Burnley's defensive record and our pretty poor attack in the last couple of games, I really, really don't see us getting anything out of the game if we go behind. So first goal, absolutely pivotal.
You may have noticed that I've stayed clear of asking you what we can all expect from the Burnley game. I think it's abundantly clear for anybody just looking at Burnley's record this year that we are in for potentially as dull a 90 minutes. Unless we can somehow miraculously pull something out of the bag, this could be an absolutely horrendous watch for the neutral. I obviously hope to be proven wrong and that it's a great performance and a great night, but Burnley have a very particular way of playing, shall we say, that does not endear itself to neutrals watching their game. So let's hope that the atmosphere can resemble Leicester City last year and we can try and get ourselves on top. Let's go round the group. Predictions time. I've just checked the predictions challenge. Nobody was right at the weekend. There's a shock. And let's get your predictions for Wednesday night. Adam and Sam, see if you can remember what your Burnley prediction was. Adam, what's yours for this one?
I'm gonna go 2-0 Burnley, I think. I think Plymouth Argyle 0 is the much more likely part of that score. But I imagine they've got enough quality to break through, and then maybe it'll be one of those where they get a late one on the break. I can't see anything other than an away victory. Those ones, of course, as a few comments have mentioned, are the ones that occasionally we're wrong on, and we can pull something out of the hat. And I'd love to see it happen. But yeah, right now, 2-0 Burnley is what I'm going with.
Sam?
Yeah, 1-0 to Burnley.
That is exactly what you put in the predictions league. Dan?
Yeah, as some people have put in the comments, although I do have a bit of an issue with the phrase typical Argyle, because typical Argyle isn't a thing. It's typical football, which applies to absolutely everyone, including Man City this season. Yeah, why not? Why not? A typical football 1-0 win.
Which is exactly what I've gone with in the predictions league. I'm the only person who hasn't predicted an away win for this week. So I'm either going to shoot up the table or find myself in a lot of peril by the end of this week's challenge. I said 1-0 at the start of at the end of December. At the moment, I can't find myself to have the same amount of confidence that it's going to be 1-0, unfortunately. And I just think Burnley are just going to grind out a result here like they do week in, week out. So I'm going to say 1-0 to Burnley, because they don't ever tend to win more than that these days, it seems. And it will just be an incredibly tough watch. But I hope, as everybody here hopes, that we can find a performance from somewhere to warm the heart. We'll certainly need warming up on Tuesday, because I don't think it's going to be a particularly pleasant evening. Aaron keeps asking us in the comments, Trafford or Cooper? So let's quickly fire that one around. Who would you rather have? Time-wasting James Trafford or Super Michael Cooper?
Trafford had a very good season after having a very tough time of it in the Premier League, but it's got to be Cooper.
Adam?
I think I would have said Cooper up until about 2 months ago, but Trafford's form has been so unbelievable recently that I'm going to pull rank and say that I'd rather have him at the moment. Nothing against you, Michael. You know we love you here, but his form has been scarily good.
Dan?
Cooper by a postcode.
Yes. I must be honest, I'm much more of a Cooper fan than a James Trafford fan, that is for sure. So Aaron, you have your answer. What you're going to do with that question, I don't know. But as Phil Beck
level above though, doesn't it? Just because how much he struggled last season and how brilliant he's been this year, it just shows the gap is getting bigger between the Premier League and the EFL. But maybe that's one for like a hot topic discussion on another day, eh, Joe?
maybe something for our new round table content, perhaps, that we're in the pipeline of. The Mighty Argyle says, hopefully we don't get a penalty against James Trafford. Well, if we do, let's hope that referee John Busby is quick to make sure that James Trafford is on his line and ready to go, so that we can take our penalty without having to wait an hour for him to fold his towel and pull up his socks and get treatment for cramp. One last one. Let's fly around the group. Carl Barnard asks, are we Hazard or Grimshaw? Who do we... obviously, at the moment, only one of them is available, but who would we have as our number one?
I'm still going to say Hazard. One swallow doesn't make a summer, but much better from Grimshaw. And if he keeps that up, maybe I'll reconsider, but still Hazard for now.
Dan?
Yeah, exactly what Sam said.
Adam?
This one we are all in agreement. I think just Hazard for now. I'd be keen to see how Grimshaw does in future games. See if he can usurp him.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think I do think Dan Grimshaw copped a lot of unnecessary flack during our poor run. I don't think he was to... I know Sam totally disagrees, and we've had many...
Who are you aiming that at, Joe? Who you...
We've had many a heated discussion in our WhatsApp group chat about this. That I do always think Dan Grimshaw has come in for some unnecessary criticism. And I was delighted to see him have a good game yesterday afternoon. But of course, we can't forget that there have been some poor moments in there as well. So that's it. We are an hour and 46 minutes in, and this is why I no longer promise at the start of these episodes to keep it to an hour. You all know the drill now. We talk a lot. So thank you to the 2,250 of you who have joined us once again this evening. The support is immense. We love doing it. We love bringing the content to you. As we teased, there is perhaps a new content idea coming up, a little bit of a round table discussion about all things football. So do stay tuned on that, because we'll need your help with that show if we do get it off the ground. But all's left for me to say my thanks to Adam, to Sam, to Dan, my thanks to all of you in the comments. It's been a lively one. I've been trying to keep up with the comments as best I can. If anybody would like to come and produce the show for us and be in charge of comments and questions, we will be taking applications, because trying to host and remember what I've got to ask next and show comments and start questions is becoming a bit of a task, but it's something we all love to do. Lads, thank you very much for joining us. We will be back. Well, I won't be. I'm flying to the northeast. Aaron will be back in the hot seat on Thursday night with Adam, John, Sam, and Graham Clark.
That was
will be
news
joining.
to me.
Sorry, Adam. Aaron will be joined by Sam, John Alsop, and Graham Clark on Thursday night. And then on Sunday night, we have Aaron being joined by Dan Ellard, James Stables from the One Team in Devon, and Nick Saunders-Smith, the Argyle analyst, to talk you through the trip to the northeast.
So Joe's rejigging the whole thing here, apparently. I thought I was on Sunday night.
This is like trying to pick the Argyle team, isn't it? No one knows what's going on.
We're having a bit of midfield rotation. I don't know. I need to check the list. Aaron's back on Thursday and Aaron's back on Sunday. Lads, I'm off to sleep. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again on Thursday night. Night all.